Welcome in, everyone, to Lively Lewis Stories.
That's right. We're back with even more awesome adventures with Levi and Ivy.
Set your storytime meter to fun and get ready to join the Lively Lewis crew.
All you need is your imagination and...
Off we go! I can't wait to see where our story takes us today.
Have you ever wanted to get more Lively Lewis in your life?
Well, we've got you covered.
Grab an adult and zoom over to livelylewisshop.com.
Or just click on the link in our show notes.
Enough about that. Let's get to today's super Lively Lewis story.
Hey friends, this is part 2 of the case of the shrinking students and the teeny tiny teacher. If you haven't listened to part 1, go check it out and then come join us on this episode. Math seemed to last forever that day, but when it was finally over, Leo waited for everyone to leave and then ran right over to the big desk at the front of the classroom. That's when he saw teeny tiny Mr. Smith, Levi, and Ivy all waving at him with big smiles on their faces. They were ready to not be so small anymore and were really hoping he could help. "Wow," said Leo over and over and over again, not believing what he was seeing. "Wow, wow, wow." After Levi and Ivy were able to calm Leo down, they quickly filled him in on the whole situation. What Leo said first made Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith jump for joy, but what he said after that surprised them all. "I'll help you for sure," answered Leo quickly. "Yay! Thank you so much!" exclaimed Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith all together. "But only $20, added Leo, which quickly stopped their excited yelling. "There's a new video game I really want to buy, and I just need $20 more to get it. So what do you say? Once I see the money, I'll fix your shrinky ray thingy." Leo had to run or he'd be late for gym and told Mr. Smith, Levi, and Ivy he'd be back before lunch in just a couple of hours. Hoping Mr. Smith had the money on him, Levi and Ivy both turned to him with wide eyes. But sadly for them, he didn't have any cash on him. "Where are we going to get $20? said Ivy, sounding worried for the first time that day. "I can't believe Leo wants us to pay him," said Mr. Smith, sounding very surprised. "Remind me when all of this is over to assign Leo some extra hard homework next week." Then, as they all sat thinking of what they could do next, they heard a tiny voice from behind. And as if their day couldn't get any stranger, when Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith turned around, they found themselves face to face with a little bumblebee. A little talking bumblebee. "Hi, I couldn't help but overhear what you were saying," said the little bumblebee. "If you need to make some money, I have some friends that could use a little help with a few chores." Normally, Mr. Smith, Levi, and Ivy would not have been able to believe what was going on. A talking bumblebee? But today, anything seemed possible. So they said hello to the little yellow and black fuzzy flyer and asked what they could do to make some money. "Great to meet you, by the way. My name is Floyd," said the bumblebee. "If you follow me out to the school garden, I'll introduce you to some friends of mine." "That sounds great," said Ivy. "Thanks so much." "We're so glad you overheard us," said Levi. "As fun as it is to be little like you, we're kind of used to being our normal sizes." They all walked toward the window, which was the quickest way to get to the school garden, but quickly realized something. Walking out to the garden was going to take a long time. A really long time, since they were so teeny tiny. Since they needed to be back in the classroom in just a couple of hours to meet up with Leo, they needed to figure out a way to get to the garden a lot quicker. That's when Floyd asked if he could fly them out there one by one. They all couldn't say yes fast enough, and one by one were whisked away out the classroom window. "Wow, Mr. Smith," said Ivy once they got out to the school garden. "This is the best science lesson about bugs ever in the history of school." "Totally," added Levi. "Science is for sure my new favorite subject. If every day could be like this, of course." "I'm glad you're enjoying it, kids, but let's not lose sight of what we need to do. Unshrink ourselves," said Mr. Smith. Floyd nodded his head and called over to one of his friends who he thought would be up for paying Levi and Ivy and Mr. Smith a bit of money to help her with some chores. She was a sweet little ladybug who wobbled over and stopped right in front of the 3 tiny travelers. "This is my friend Lily. She's always looking for help with her house chores," said Floyd. "That's right," replied Lily. "I'd be happy to pay you if you can help sweep out my tiny nest, clear some fallen leaves out of my yard, and help put up a little fence around my garden." Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith happily accepted the jobs and got right to work. After Lily paid them, Floyd introduced them to Wiggle, his yellow and blue caterpillar friend who needed some help at the Caterpillar Cafe. Wiggle was happy to help Levi and Ivy and Mr. Smith when once he heard why they needed the money. Then after a little while of cleaning some tables and prepping some tasty berries and leaves for the lunch rush, the the 3 teeny tiny travelers were off to find another job. "This will likely be the last job we can help with," said Mr. Smith. "We need to get back to the classroom in just a bit to meet back up with Leo." "Gosh, it sure is hot out here in the garden," said Ivy. "After all that work, I could use something cold to drink." Hearing Ivy say that gave Levi an idea. "How about we open up a lemonade stand?" suggested Levi. "It would be a good way to make the last bit of money we need, and we can have a tasty cold drink too." "Great idea," said Mr. Smith. "There are lemons right here in the garden, and if Floyd can spare some honey to sweeten our mix, we'll be all set." They all agreed to creating a fun lemonade stand, and in just a short time, they had collected the last bit of money that they needed from some very thirsty insect friends. "That was the best lemonade I've ever had," said Ivy, taking one last sip from her teeny tiny cup. "It was Floyd's honey that made it so good for sure," added Levi. "We can't thank you enough, Floyd," says Mr. Smith, "for the sweet honey and for all your help today." "It was my pleasure to help," replied Floyd. "I hope everything works out, and the next time I see you, you won't be quite so small." Floyd then flew Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith one by one back to the classroom, said goodbye one last time, and flew back to the school garden, hoping to see his friends again soon. Once back in the classroom, Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith walked quickly back to the big desk at the front of the room and waited patiently for Leo to return. In no time at all, he walked back in the classroom just like he had promised. It was lunchtime, so he would have only 25 minutes to fix what was wrong with the shrink ray before he had to run off to computer class. "So, did you get the $20? asked Leo with a smile on his face. "We sure did," answered Levi, holding up 20 very tiny $1 bills. Leo had grabbed a magnifying glass when he walked into the classroom so he could see everything a bit better and held it up to the money. "No way!" exclaimed Leo. "You really did it. I was just joking. Just playing a prank. You don't have to pay me anything. I'm happy to help you because I can and because it's the right thing to do." Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith just stood there stunned and very happy that Leo really wanted to help them out of the kindness of his heart. But since they had such a wonderful time making the money and meeting all the wonderful bugs in the school garden, they weren't mad at Leo's little prank. They thanked Leo over and over and over again and let him get to work on fixing the shrink ray. Using a magnifying glass he had and some very pointy tweezers, Leo spotted the problem quickly and got right to work. It was a loose wire that needed to be reconnected. "This happened to my video game system just last week," said Leo as he worked. "It would turn on, but it wouldn't turn off. And there we are, all fixed. At least this is what fixed my video game system last week." He handed the tiny shrink ray back to Mr. Smith, then placed the magnifying glass and tweezers on the big desk. "All this tiny repair work made me hungry," said Leo as he headed out of the classroom. "Good luck on shrinking yourselves." "Thank you so much, Leo," shouted Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith as Leo waved goodbye and ran off to the cafeteria. Mr. Smith held the shrink ray in his hands and looked at Levi and Ivy. This was the moment they had been waiting for. After looking over the shrink ray for a bit, Mr. Smith finally spoke. "When I push the reverse button on the shrink ray, it will create a portal in front of us. It will look like a big glowing circle," began Mr. Smith. "When we walk through it, it should turn us all back to our normal sizes." "Should?" said Levi, sounding concerned. "I mean, Leo is really good at science and fixing video game systems," said Mr. Smith, "so I'm confident it will work." Levi and Ivy had no alternative, so they trusted Mr. Smith as they counted together. "Hey friends, can we count down from 3 together? Ready? 3, 2, 1. Great job. At the count of 1, Mr. Smith pushed the reverse button and a glowing circular portal opened up before them. Mr. Smith told Levi and Ivy he would step through first to test it out. Then within seconds after stepping through the portal, Levi and Ivy were so excited to see Mr. Smith standing tall before them, back to his normal height. "It worked!" shouted Mr. Smith. "Come on through, Levi and Ivy." They held hands, closed their eyes, and counted down from 3 once more and walked through the glowing portal, which disappeared behind them once they were through. And thankfully, once they opened their eyes on the other side, they too were back to their normal heights. So happy to be back, they jumped up and down and ran around the classroom. "Thank you, Mr. Smith," said Levi. "That certainly wasn't a typical science class, but it definitely was the best." "Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Smith," said Ivy with a smile. "But if you'd like a little advice, I'd keep the shrink ray at home." "Great idea," said Mr. Smith with a laugh. "I don't know about you, but I'm pretty hungry after such a interesting morning. Let's head to the cafeteria and grab some food before your next class." And as they turned to walk out of the classroom, the school principal, Mrs. Binder, passed by the door. Oh, there you all are, she said, stopping to talk. We've been looking everywhere for you. Where did you run off to? Replied Mr. Smith as he gathered his thoughts. We just went on a little science trip to the school garden. A very little trip, giggled Ivy to Levi. Okay, but next time, Mr. Smith, please take your whole class, said Mrs. Binder as she continued down the hallway. Mrs. Smith just smiled at Levi and Ivy and said, I don't think I'll be taking any more little trips to the school garden, at least not until I work on that shrink ray a lot more. They all agreed that that was the best idea as they left the classroom for the school cafeteria. Ivy, still with her magnifying glass and detective kit in hand, couldn't help but take a closer look at a little bumblebee as it buzzed by them in the hallway. It wasn't Floyd, but as she knew they would all see him again soon. Once they arrived in the cafeteria, Mr. Smith took out the now normal-sized $21 bills and said he would be happy to buy Levi and Ivy anything they wanted for lunch after the morning they'd had. That's when Levi and Ivy noticed everyone around them enjoying a special drink. They waited in line, and as they got closer, they saw on a sign that the special drink of the day was honey lemonade. Because of the morning they had, nothing surprised them that day. They just smiled and each ordered a cup of cold, sweet lemonade. They also bought Leo a cup to say thank you before buying the rest of their lunch. Then Levi, Ivy, and Mr. Smith sat down to enjoy their honey lemonade as they ate their lunch and talked about their great mini adventure. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned a little something too.
And since we know everyone has their own story, we'd love to hear yours.
If you have an idea for a Lively Lewis story, leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, your idea, and your little one's name.
Then maybe our next adventure will be with you.
Until our next Storytime Hangout.
Thanks for listening. We can't wait to share another fun Lively Lewis story with you.